What is up, down, and sideways, you truly stunning individuals? It's another epi of League Unlock. Eric and Mark here with you guys for a little special epi today because we now know later on in the year we're going to be getting something we've been calling for, a Nations Cup. That is regional, national pride of, countries representing kind of like the Olympics for esports, and getting some look at the format. 16 teams allegedly going to be included in this. We don't have 16 rosters to get through, but basically your 10 best that would actually be competitive, and you might need to get to the third or fourth team from South Korea before they start getting beatable.
Oh boy, I think that it is very long overdue to have one of these type of cups, a type of tournament where you are representing for your country nationally, these type of things, and especially it is extra valuable to have one that is outside of the Olympic circuit. As we've seen with all, everything else, you have to have something to supplement between the years, because again, 4 years, that is a long time to go between international competitions. And yes, having that type of duration can build up to certain points, but without that payoff in between, absolutely can be a bit of a downer. So having something on your own is important to establish. Good thing that we're going to be getting that started this year.
And again, the rules are no more than 3 players from a single squad, and you're allowed 2 substitutes. So that's a total of 7 players on the squad. And let's start with the heavy hitter, and that would be Team South Korea. It's no shortage of talent to put together, but we're slamming in the max you can for 3 Gen G and 3 T1 players. You can obviously, Chovy's going to be the starting guy. Faker comes in as the sub, of course, because he's Faker. Maybe you split out Owner and Canyon, the 2 premier junglers, and then since you've already used 3 of each squad when you throw in Ruler and Kyria, how about a little Zeus in the top lane and Score as your head coach? I find it impossible to see a way where that team does not win gold.
Hard pressed, but anything can happen when you step into the arena of an international competition, and especially when you're looking at the choices and decisions that have to be made when you have the luxury of the buffet that South Korea has as far as choosing from it, and not just a regular buffet. We are talking the top end of top end items out here, the Wagyu beef and lobster of buffets out here. But the problem with that, I will present to you, is when you're talking about a sport and something like this where you are involving chemistry and communication and team play so much, how do you mix and match is going to be that real ultimate equation. It's not going to be about, oh man, you left Chovy behind. You're not leaving Chovy behind. You're taking the best guys, yes, but getting them to work together and to play to their maximum potential that they have built their careers out of in this mix and match of a format. That would be, I think, really kind of the work behind the scenes, and as far as crafting the roster, that would really matter.
Yeah, and that's where you have some of this built-in synergy. Obviously, Chovy, whether he's with Canyon, Ruler, there's the Genji angle. Owner and Kyria together are kind of the heartbeat of a T1 roster. So you do have that built-in synergy a little bit. Zeus has played with some of these guys before. And then I don't know if coaches would count towards the players. Like, you couldn't have a T1 or Genji coach probably. That's why we threw Score in there as one of these OG guys. But, I mean, even you throw together a B team in Korea, you're having like Keen, Kanavi, BDD, Showmaker, Guma, and Pays, and then Duro. Like, that's still probably winning the whole thing.
Yeah, so again, even if everybody on Team 1 is sick with the flu or whatever it is type of thing, maybe the League of Legends MMO has come out and we're taking a couple days off for that type of thing. Who knows? But even in
it's
that
just their
case,
scrim team is this B team.
Yeah, exactly. Even the scrim partner team that you could be going up against would be a Goliath on the international stage. This is where, again, talking about as far as how do you mix and match that first team. Out of that first team, you're kind of then left with, okay, well, how are we picking together the remnants, the leftovers here to make a solid meal? And you're like, wow, that's
pretty good.
That's a gourmet dinner. That's pretty solid. And then, again, as you keep going down, maybe it'll look a little bit more like your normal Tuesday microwave TV dinner, but it's going to take at least down to kind of team 4 or 5 until we're getting to that point when you're talking about a nation like South Korea.
And listen, their main rival would be, of course, China. We've seen this at Asian Games before, these two perennial powerhouses, but there's really no weaknesses in that A team for South Korea. Even the Chinese roster, you're looking going, okay, Jungle, maybe a little sus. Both Jun and JJ, guys who have had ups and downs. You have both of them. Flandre and Bin, you go topside, and I think Vampire will jump out to people on this list, but you can't throw on because if you have to prioritize 3 BLG members, I think you're going full topside. Knight is a no-brainer. Jun and Bin, I think, need to be on this roster, so you keep that built-in inherent synergy that Gala and Vampire have on JDG. Throw in Tabe as the head coach. This is an amazing roster, easy silver, but is it beating Korea? No, probably not.
No, it's going to take one of those, kind of anything can happen type of moments. And specifically, I'd look at the jungle picks in this regard. When you're looking at Jun, you're looking at JJ. Both of these ones have the capability and have shown the ability to take down Korean teams, Korean threats at that ultimate stage. It hasn't been a guarantee by any means in one of those type of, way you're evaluating it. So that would be where that plays into it and would be one of those angles you're hoping you would be pushing everything towards getting that level of performance out of that jungle position specifically to, I think, have a chance into that type of playing field. But when you're talking about what you are taking, who you are taking in this regard, Tabe is the no question for me as the coach. That has to be what you are prioritizing, what we have seen from him over the last 2 years or so, 2 years and a half in the LPL. Unquestioned to me, he's the mastermind that you want behind the bench in this regard. I don't know if for this Nations Cup, whether we're going to be bringing in the wacky LCK Cup that you can have the coach call in and whatever, but
definitely need some kind of gimmick to go with it like that.
If we're bringing in a gimmick like that, Tabe would be a pretty darn good voice I would want to have coming on through in those crucial clutch type of moments to clarify things, as well as looking at, yes, to me, it is the instant answer that you have to throw down. If you're throwing down a 3-stack of T1, a 3-stack of a Gen G, you got to answer with a 3-stack of BLG, and especially that 3-stack from top to mid lane.
Definitely, though, the support role is where China, it doesn't matter, even if you fit on in, like the Mako Ming era is no more. Ain't nobody on that Chinese roster matching up to what Kyria or even somebody like Duro is putting out in that support role for South Korea. Outside of those big top two, there's a lot of good teams that could still field a pretty solid roster. And let's start right at home in North America. It's not Team USA. I feel like Team Canada might have more potential even than the USA roster when you pull it up. Obviously, you've got the rock-solid core of Jojo Pyun, Masu, and Vulcan down there. And then the young bloods on that top side. Remember, old Sniper. Zamudo shouldn't have visa issues if he's playing for Canada. Kryra has only played a few series on the LCS and then, split some time with Tomio. And even throw in a solid head coach in Mr. Dylan Falco, and I'm liking the look of this roster, Mark.
Yeah, I'm going to say I'm maybe quite obviously on the maple syrup, hopium, copium angle, so I'm going to certainly be biased with this one, but I think
the jersey gave it away, I think. Yeah.
I'm very upfront with it right now today, but I think the Canadian roster is still one that could be one of the interesting ones when you talk about having one of these Nations Cup because of what you present on this roster of established top-tier players. When you're looking at Jojo Pyun, he's been the guy, and especially with what he has done with Movistar Koi, that's one of the angles that you would have to be looking at. And then adding on to it, you have Vulcan, maybe a little bit of synergy still built over from those days. And, of course, Masu down in that bottom lane you still feel very solid with. But there is that young talent that is coming through. I think that is going to be one of those talking points. You mentioned General Sniper. I think it is important to mention him and remember him when you are looking at something like this, and especially from the Canadian angle. But we are very much so looking at a new era coming through soon, and just it has been delayed for visa issues, whatever. But as you mentioned, no visa issues to take away from an event like this. Zamudo, welcome onto the team, even if it's in a substitute role. One of the important things to keep track of when you talk about international Olympic type of competition, these substitutes usually do factor in. It isn't just,
100%.
You're here tagging along as an extra, a lot of the times it is something where, okay, we need to figure out how this team is going to operate at its maximum efficiency. And sometimes it is a substitute piece coming in the right moment or taking over for an expected starter or whatever. So you need to be prepared for that. And that's the angle that I do really like about this Canadian team, bringing that young talent.
And, worst case scenario, these subs are coming in as an extra set of eyes, something to help the coaching staff. And case in point, when you look at a Team USA roster, it was kind of a struggle to even find some of these subs. We throw in contracts alongside Blabber. Again, it never hurts to have two sets of jungler eyes looking at some of these games, but Big Dokes on the top side, APA in that mid lane, Jan, hopefully the relationship is still good between those two after Team Liquid, and then easy slot in Busio, who technically could be on Team Poland as well, but I assume he'd probably play for US because I think his English is a little bit better than his Polish.
Think so, Ed, but maybe every year, every month that goes by on that Carmine Corp contract, maybe he does become a little bit more accustomed.
It depends how Inspired sells him on the Polish team,
Yeah, it depends on the hot tubs over in Poland and how they are convincing him to join in. When you're talking about the American team, I think right away, as you mentioned, Blabber contracts in the jungle is one of those things that I think, again, is not only individually things that you could look at, but I think as a duo behind the scenes type of ones that would work together, that's got a history there, and I like that. I like that angle for the American team. APA steps in with the all-American trash talk into the mid lane, dropping it down, and yes, I think it would be a slight factor to talk about, but I think it'd be one of those ones that is easily sorted out with some Korean barbecue or whatever has to go down to ease the tensions there for them on a squad representing their country.
Yeah, that usually kind of fixes all things when you are seeing that. Case in point, look at any of the Olympic basketball teams or anything like that, where rivalries are completely gone when you do hit that international competition. One of the other big contenders and can now field a truly star-studded roster would be Team Taiwan. And that's because CFO of 2025, they're not all on a team anymore, which means you could fit Rest, Driver, Junjia, Hongkyu, Doggo all on the same roster and still be under that same or be under the rule limit for this event. Throw in Chawi as the head coach and maybe even Xiaoxi over Kai Wing of that old CFO roster. But that's honestly probably the third best roster that would be at this event.
Would be very much one of the more interesting, more exciting options that would show up, and one of these ones that would be counted on to make things interesting, to make things spicy, and really pull off an upset somewhere in the bracket. I think would be the way that you'd be looking at it. And I don't know if this is just the copium angle or if this is the long con after it all, the whole implosion of CFO to enable a roster like this on the international stage representing nationally is something that I think is one of the fun angles to take with this one. But I think when you are talking about this, for me, you have to be going for that interesting angle, right? That creativity that we have seen so many times from the teams representing that region. Now we need to see it from the national team that would be representing for them, and need to see that type of creativity and play style that is only coming out of that type of area.
After the Taiwanese team, then we gotta go rapid fire through what you could put together as a best European squads. And listen, if you just did all of EU, you could make a stacked roster. It would basically be G2 at that point. But you could still put together some decent ones. And let's start with Team Spain, where you'd love to have all 4 MCOI members, but since you can only have 3, I think Mirwin, Elyoya, and Alvaro are the priorities because Legolas is an okay ERL AD carry. Mid lane is the real weak point where you have Massaquino coming in that I'm not sure he would stack up. And that's kind of the theme with all these EU squads is there's kind of at least one weak point on most of these rosters.
Yeah, and it's one of these ones where you have to find a way of where is your strength going to outweigh a weakness or an area where you could be exposed. Looking at some of these, more threatening, more complete rosters that we have already talked about, that's unfortunately where you leave yourself open if you are looking at the Spanish roster. But it would be one of those ones where yes, you have to take down and put down on that roster the Mad Lions, Movistar Core boys. You got to have that one in there. You got to have Elyoya. You have to have Alvaro for me as well. Merwin is one of those ones where he's bringing that angle of what is interesting, what creativity you can bring towards it. Just as we were talking previously with the Taiwanese team about what you could bring through. I think would like to see that from him, of course, if he is representing. But the big ones has got to be the playmaking, the leadership that someone like Elyoya has shown, and then the creativity as well and playmaking that you get from Alvaro down in the bottom lane and some of that roaming. I think that is another aspect that you would want to bring to the international stage.
Throw in Mithi as a head coach, too, in Spain, looking like one of the top-tier EU squads. Right there with them is probably Team France, because we got lots of LEC and pro-level guys. Absolutely, Adam would be on this roster, but I'm throwing in Bad Lulu as well, because it's probably always safe to have a sub when you have Adam on the roster. But obviously, the standouts on this squad are going to be Skewmond in the jungle and Kalist in the AD carry spot. That's about as top tier as EU talent as you can get.
This is just an extension of the blue wave, really, is where you feel like you find some of this power and kind of solid ground to stand on if you are looking at the French team in this situation. I'm not going to argue with the history in the past to say that it would be a smart angle to take another option than Adam in the top side, just in case things are whatever they are going to be. Having that extra option there, having that substitute type of one would be that safety that you would want to have in that team roster construction. But again, your big focus is, of course, Kalist and what he has become in the bottom lane and what he is going to continue to become as a star premier ADC within the LEC. Skewmond as well as bringing some very good pedigree out of the recent performances out of G2, but still someone I think on the international stage, yes, is at a very high level, but doesn't quite ring the same bell that someone like Elyoya does, still coming from Europe.
Hansama, a guy you could also throw as a sub just to have on the roster, have his experience. But Kalist, by the way, not even 20 years old, and he's already accomplished so much within the LEC.
Pretty rich substitute if you're going to have Hansama backing up already Kalist.
Some stacked 80 carries for France. If you did a Denmark roster like 10 years ago, you'd have guys role swapping all over. It would be stacked. Later on in the years, it hits a little bit differently. Now, you've still got caps in the mid lane, so like this team can compete purely with that, and we've seen Wonder have a resurgence on SK Gaming, didn't really miss a beat. Sven is still top tier. It's the jungle and support for the Danish team that gets a little bit sus. If you want an actual ERL guy, C-Boy there in the jungle, or you bring in the Teemo one-trick Brax out of retirement to hit the international stage again.
Oh, I don't think anyone wants to see the Teemo specialist coming on out onto some of his ref. I will say, I think the Denmark team of, half decade ago was one of the teams that did bring up the inspiration to talk about an event like this because
Fragen, Bjergsen, Jensen.
The superstars were there, and it absolutely was one of these ones where it was some of the very best of the best from the West that you could have stacked up against any of these potential superstar squads from South Korea, from China. This was one of the ones that you wanted to see on the stage, and especially because, as you said, it would have been so much role swapping because it was this plethora of really just the mid laners and ADCs, and then it was, okay, we'll take these ultra-talented, ultra-skilled positions, and now let's see how they handle the roles that they usually talk bad about, the jungler, the top laner, all these. But we see the creativity and seeing them play. That's what that excitement was all about. It doesn't exactly translate to the current edition that you would be having to field out, but at least you are benefited by Caps, the long-standing member, the one that was still going to be the baby. He was going to be the baby on that type of squad and all these things, but now he is the established veteran, the old-timer for this Denmark squad that would be going on.
A sleeper squad to look at here is Team Turkey. You got lots of LEC, not just LEC, but all pro level when you're talking about Nako. Rylesh has had an incredible start with Na'Vi. You've even got Paris in at support for that Na'Vi synergy. Saren was pretty good in the mid lane. It's really only the AD carry Aitanoth that's not a tier 1 player, but this could low-key be one of the better EU rosters to put together.
Yeah, and I think it's also one of these ones where, unfortunately, you're going with that recency, what we have seen, and again, going with some of the chemistry that could be built in from some of these professional rosters. Na'Vi, Nako, and what we have seen and what he has been able to do in the LEC so far. I think that's why you're going with this one, because, again, you're leaving behind some good experience with a guy like Broken Blade off on the side, someone that certainly could be up to that type of tier in performing on the international stage.
And Broken Blade, you mentioned him, another guy who could play for 2 different squads, could be on there with Turkey, could be on there with Team Germany, which also has a pretty decent looking roster. If you throw BB in that top side, Lurox or Agurin coming from the challenger squad. Jungle is that suspect role. PoE or Abadage in the mid lane, also maybe a little suspect, as both of them are past their prime, you could say. But a bot lane of Upset and Kaiser we have seen before. Again, pretty rock solid roster to put together.
And again, one of the fun things about having these type of international competitions is sometimes you get the names of old that do come out for some of these countries to represent.
They're still playing? Huh?
Still playing and still dishing out some damage, still dishing out some performances out on Summoner's Rift is going to be one of those things that you would have to keep track of. No better example than listing out some guys like PoE and Abadage. I'm keeping track of PoE. He's maybe not playing as much League of Legends as you'd like to in that regard, but he's still around, still kicking, still playing some stuff, and absolutely is one of those angles that, again, you would see in other countries, other things as you extend down. This list is going down to, what I think you said, something like 15 or 16 is the expected total. Yeah, you'll be seeing some old heads, some old names coming out of the woodwork to represent for their country.
Sweden, Greece, Australia, other squads, Vietnam you could throw in, but if there's any other countries you can think of, throw them in the comments. This is just the starting and the best of the best, but regardless of where this is played, going to be an exciting format, and I hope it's something that sticks around when it does come by. But that is it today for League Unlock. Eric and Mark here with you, Stunners. Thanks so much for hanging out.